The silence of the border was not natural. On the bridge of the Karate hegemony vessel KSS Vanguard, First Observer Min felt it in his bones. His 4 slender fingers tapped a silent rhythm on his data console. The starfield on the main view screen was clear and bright, but the sensors told a different story. A wall of fuzzy, whispering static began exactly at the line marking human demilitarized space. Sensor distortion field is consistent with old reports, Captain, Min said, his voice calm. Heavy degradation of long-range scans. It reads like decay. Captain Kale stood tall, his gray, leathery skin pulled tight in what passed for a smile among the Karate. Decay is correct, First Observer. The evidence of their end. Proceed through the distortion. Let us see the corpse of an empire. The Vanguard, a sleek spear of polished metal and warm light, slid forward. The distortion washed over the ship like a cold tide. Lights on the bridge dimmed for a second before the stabilizers corrected. On the screens, the clear starfield was replaced by a mess of sensor ghosts and echoes. And there, just as the old charts promised, where the ruins dot a planet, third from its sun, was encircled by a grotesque necklace of dead metal. Orbital habitats, once great wheels of life, were now dark and twisted, some torn open to the void. Among them floated the carcasses of ships, human ships. Their designs were blocky, pragmatic. They drifted in a silent, slow-motion dance of death, coated in a glittering frost of frozen gases and time. Xenobiologist Hannah let out a soft breath from her station. Her large, dark eyes reflected the graveyard on the screen. The scale of it, the plague must have been horrific. To kill a species across so many stars. Efficiency is the key to survival, scholar, Captain Kale stated, his eyes fixed on the primary resource scanner, which was beginning to light up with beautiful, promising colors. Their lack of it killed them. Our presence here honors their memory by making use of what they left behind. Look at those planetary readings. Unmined metals, unclaimed hydroponic potential. This system alone could fuel a hegemony frontier for a century. Min watched the data stream. His job was patterns and something felt off. The ruins were not behaving like simple, cold metal. The long-range optical feed on Habitat Gamma 7 showed a completely dark structure. But as the Vanguard's shadow passed over it, a single line of external lights flickered on along its spine, then off. A minute later, a different cluster blinked on, then off. It was random, like a malfunction dot or a reflex. Captain, Min began. I am detecting intermittent low-energy pulses from several of the larger derelicts. Not power signatures, more like system pings. Centuries-old automated systems, failing in the dark. Kale waved a hand. Ignore them. Set course for the inner system, the 4th planet. Scans show a viable atmosphere and the highest concentration of former infrastructure. We will find our answers there. The journey inward was a tour through a museum of death. Every planet had its ring of ruins. Every moon had a dead outpost. The silence was immense, pressing on the ears. Yet the random flickers of light followed them. A comms tower on a barren moon would flash once as they passed. A shattered freighter's emergency beacon would pulse a week, repeating code for exactly 11 seconds before going dead again. Hannah recorded it all. The pattern is not random, Captain, she said, her voice hesitant. The lights activate in response to our proximity. It is a reaction. A reaction implies a thinker, scholar, Kale replied, growing impatient. There is no thinker here, only ghosts and dust. Increase speed. Then, the comms officer, a young Karate named Jay, spoke up. Captain, I am receiving a stream of data. It is very fast, very compressed. It is on a standard Karate emergency frequency, but the encoding, it is not one of ours. Cannot lock it. It is like a whisper. For the first time, a sliver of doubt touched Kale's confidence. Record it. All of it. Can you isolate any of the content? Jay worked her console, her fingers flying. It is fractured. I have pieces. She patched an audio fragment to the main speakers. A burst of static, Then a clear, calm human voice, speaking in the common galactic tongue. Repeat. This is the freighter Dawn's Light. Quarantine is a failure. Do not approach. The dark is not EMP. The voice cut, replaced by a different one, frantic, yelling in a human language. Under it, a layer of music, something with a fast, rhythmic beat. Then a weather report for a place called Midwest Plains. Then a child's laugh. It all collapsed back into static. The bridge was utterly silent. The cheerful human music echoed in their minds, a horrifying contrast to the dead ships outside. A log buoy, Kale finally said, his voice tighter than before. A final, scrambled distress call, playing on a loop for 100 years.
Assad footnote.
Do not let the ghosts unnerve you. We are Karati. We have faced worse than echoes. But Min was looking at his sensor suite. The random pings had stopped. Now, the network of dead stations and ships was silent. It was a watchful, waiting silence. He felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ship's climate control. They were not tourists in a graveyard. They were being scanned. They had crossed the border, moved from the silent void into a place that was only pretending to be silent. The ruins were not just dead things. They were a perimeter. Captain, Min said quietly, I recommend we go to tactical alert. Kale looked at him, then back at the lush, inviting world now filling their view screen. It was green and blue and beautiful. It promised answers and riches. No, first observer, Kale said, the ambition burning away his caution. We go to landing protocols. The past is dead. It is time to claim the future. He gave the order, and the Vanguard turned its nose toward the green planet, sailing deeper into the hungry, watching dark. The planet, designated Eden 7 by the ship's computer, grew to fill the view screen. It was a world of stunning blues and lush greens, wrapped in perfect white clouds. To the Karati on the bridge, it was a paradise found in a tomb. It was the answer to all their questions and the key to their fortune. But the sensors continued to tell a different, confusing story. Atmosphere is nitrogen-oxygen, well within tolerable range, Min reported, his eyes not leaving his screens. Temperature gradients are stable. Organic life signs are prolific. Every continent shows dense biological activity. Excellent, Captain Kale said, leaning forward. Now show me the cities. Show me their energy signatures. That was the problem. Min adjusted the scan. He looked for the telltale heat blooms of fusion reactors, the geometric patterns of urban sprawl, the electromagnetic buzz of a technological society. He found nothing. The planet's surface was a warm, natural blanket of life, unmarked by any central power source. It was as if the cities had never been there. No centralized grids, Captain, Min said, a knot of tension forming in his chest.
No reactor signatures.
No orbital traffic control signals. If there is technology down there, it is not drawing power in any way we can detect. Hannah, the biologist, spoke up. However, I am picking up radio waves. Immense amounts of them. They are covering many frequencies. But they are chaotic. Put it on speaker, Kale ordered. Jay worked her console, and a wall of sound washed over the bridge. It was not one signal, but thousands, all piled on top of each other. A solemn human voice spoke about the final evacuation order. A fragment of a dramatic orchestral piece swelled beneath it. A fast-talking commercial for a ground car. A crackling report of agricultural data, soil pH, and rainfall. A sobbing prayer. A cheerful song teaching the alphabet. They bled together into a sad, mad symphony of a dead civilization, echoing into the void. It is just noise, Kale declared, though his voice lacked its earlier certainty. The last broadcasts, bouncing around in the atmosphere forever. A fossil of sound. Min pointed to a secondary display. The content is not consistent with a fossil, Captain. Some of these transmissions reference stellar drift patterns that match the current epoch. This is not a recording from 200 years ago. The words are old, but the data is new. It is being updated. A heavy quiet settled on the bridge, broken only by the ghostly choir from the planet. The beautiful, peaceful world below was whispering with the voices of the dead, and the whispers contained fresh information. "A probe," Kale said, his decision made. "We send down a reconnaissance probe. Full visual and biological sweep. We look with our own eyes." The probe was launched. It was a sleek, teardrop-shaped device, designed for stealth and detail. It shot through the atmosphere, its cameras activating. The bridge crew watched the feed on the main screen. They saw verdant jungles and rolling hills. They saw the ruins of human settlement. But these were not the grand, skeletal towers of the orbital habitats. These were the broken teeth of small towns, being swallowed by green. Vines crawled over the rusted shells of ground cars. Trees grew through the roofs of houses. Yet, there were signs that made the crew lean closer. Paths, not overgrown animal trails, but clear, maintained footpaths winding through the trees. Sections of land, perfectly rectangular, free of trees and covered in neat rows of alien-looking crops. They saw a water mill, its well turning slowly in a river, connected to a series of clear plastic pipes that ran toward a cluster of buildings. "This is not a dead world," Hannah whispered, captivated. "This is a garden, a managed ecosystem. Focus on the largest structure cluster," Kale commanded. The probe obeyed, zooming in on a settlement built around the ruins of a town square. The buildings were a mix of old concrete and new, crude brick. Smoke rose from a few chimneys. There were no electric lights, no vehicles. Then, movement. A human walked into the center of the square. The crew froze. The human was female, dressed in clothes made from animal hides and thick, patched plant fabric. Her hair was tied back simply. She carried a basket woven from reeds. She looked healthy, strong. She stopped and placed her basket down. Then, slowly, she turned her face upward. She looked directly at the hovering probe. Her expression was not one of shock, or wonder, or fear. It was a look of cool assessment. She studied the probe for a long moment, her eyes sharp and intelligent. She tilted her head, as if listening to something they could not hear. Then, she raised her hand. It was not a wave. It was a single, deliberate motion, pointing off to the east, away from her settlement. A second later, the probe's feed dissolved into a storm of digital static. A final, distorted image flashed. The sky, spinning wildly, before the screen went completely black. The signal was lost. What happened? Kale snapped. Did it crash? Was it attacked? Min was already analyzing the telemetry. No impact warning. The signal was not jammed. It was consumed. Something overwhelmed its systems and dissolved the connection from the outside in. It was deactivated with extreme precision. Jay looked up from the comm station, her face pale. The radio transmissions from the planet. They have changed. The chaotic babble had ceased. In its place, on every frequency, a single, clear audio loop played. It was a human voice, calm and weary, speaking the common galactic tongue they had heard in the fragment. "You are not welcome here. Turn back. This is the only warning you will receive. Turn back." The message repeated, over and over. It filled the bridge, a flat, emotionless dirge. Outside the view screen, the planet Eden 7 hung in the void, beautiful and green and silent except for that one repeating phrase. The woman's assessing gaze seemed to linger in the air. She had not been afraid of them. She had been evaluating a threat. And then she had pointed, not at herself, but away. Captain Kale stared at the screen, his ambition now clashing with a deep primal unease. The ghosts were not just talking. They were giving orders, and they had just swatted his eye from their sky without showing a single weapon. "Arm the tactical team," he said, his voice low and hard. "We go down in force. We will get our answers directly." Captain Kale's order echoed in the tense quiet of the bridge. The calm, repeating warning from the planet was finally shut off, leaving a silence that felt heavier than before. The crew moved with a new urgency, but it was a nervous energy. The view of the peaceful green world outside now felt like a lie. Tay, the tactical officer, checked his energy rifle for the third time. He was a veteran, his gray skin marked with old ritual scars from a dozen campaigns. He had fought crystalline hive minds and plasma-wielding rebels. But this, a quiet garden world and a single human woman's cold stare, felt wrong. His squad of 5 others stood ready in the shuttle bay, their armor gleaming under the bright lights. They were the best of the vanguard. "Your mission is simple," Captain Kale's voice came over the comm. "Secure the landing zone. Find a human. Bring it back for study. Show no aggression unless attacked, but defend yourselves. We must understand what we are dealing with." The shuttle, a sleek and angular craft, detached from the vanguard with a soft thump. It pierced the atmosphere, its shields glowing briefly with the heat of entry. Tay watched the landscape rise up to meet them. It was even more vivid from here. The green was overwhelming, the air on the external sensors clean and rich. "Scanning for the settlement from the probe feed," the pilot said. "I have a clearing approximately 2 kilometers east of the target location. It is large enough for landing. Reading no energy signatures, no metallic mass beneath. It is just a clear field. Set us down there," Tay ordered. The clearing was perfect. A circle of soft, mossy grass surrounded by tall, broad-leaf trees. Sunlight streamed down, dappled and warm. The shuttle's landing gear extended with a hydraulic hiss and settled gently onto the ground. The engines whined down into silence. For a moment, there was only the sound of the wind in the leaves and the distant call of an unknown bird. It was peaceful. Too peaceful. Tay's training screamed at him. A perfect landing zone was often a trap. "Squad, form a perimeter. Visual scan only. Do not rely on motion trackers. The biological interference is too high." The ramp lowered. The air that washed in was thick, humid, and full of strange, sweet smells. The Karate soldiers stepped out, their boots sinking slightly into the soft earth. They fanned out, rifles held ready, their helmet scanners painting the tree line in shades of thermal green. Nothing moved except the swaying branches. "Area clear," one soldier reported. "Too clear," Tay muttered. "Let's be fast." We moved toward the settlement on foot. Leave the pilot to guard the shuttle. He took 3 steps away from the craft, toward the eastern tree line where the woman had pointed. Then, the ground vanished. It did not explode. It did not collapse with a roar. Simply opened. A massive section of the clearing, exactly the size of the shuttle, dropped away like a stone through water. 1 second the shuttle was there, a symbol of advanced technology. The next, it was gone, swallowed by the earth with a muffled, grinding sound of soil and roots. A perfect, deep, dark hole remained, edges clean as if cut with a tool. The squad stood frozen, staring at the void where their ride home had been. "Ambush!" Tay shouted, snapping into action. "Defensive positions, back to back." But before they could fully form up, the forest came alive. Not with energy bolts, but with a sharp, whistling sound. Projectiles erupted from the green gloom. They were not lasers. They were small, dark shapes moving incredibly fast. One struck a soldier in the chest plate with a solid thwack. It was a hardened wooden dart, its tip smeared with something dark. It shattered against the armor, but the force knocked the soldier back. Another found the gap between a soldier's helmet and shoulder guard. He gasped, his hand flying to his neck before he slumped to the ground, unconscious. "There in the trees! Return fire!" Tay yelled, aiming his rifle at the shifting shadows. He fired a searing blue bolt. It struck a tree trunk, exploding bark and setting the wet wood smoldering. There was no cry of pain, only more whistling darts. Then, the wildlife attacked. Small, furry creatures with glittering black eyes burst from the undergrowth. They moved in impossible leaps, attaching themselves to armor seams. They did not bite to wound. They bit to inject. A soldier screamed as one found the soft joint behind his knee. His leg gave out instantly. From above, large, winged shapes swooped down. They were not birds as Tay knew them. They had too many leathery wings. They dropped small, pottery-like pods that burst at the soldier's feet, releasing clouds of fine, irritating powder that clogged filters and made them choke and stumble. That IT was not a battle. It was a dismantling. Their superior technology was useless against darts, toxins, and swarming beasts. The forest itself was the enemy. Tay fired again and again, but he was hitting leaves and shadows. He saw a human figure then, just for a second, standing behind a tree 30 meters away. It was a male, his face calm, watching. He made a short, sharp gesture with his hand that a net, woven from nearly invisible synthetic fibers, fell from the canopy above Tay. It was heavy and sticky, tangling his arms and rifle. He fought against it, but the more he struggled, the more trapped he became. He fell to his knees. The last thing he saw before a dart pricked his exposed neck was his squad, all on the ground, subdued not by glorious energy weapons, but by rope, venom, and clever, cruel traps. The forest went quiet again, the birdsong returning as if nothing had happened. The perfect clearing held only a deep, dark hole and the scent of strange flowers. His vision darkened, and the final thought in his mind was not of defeat, but of profound, unsettling understanding. They had not been attacked by soldiers. They had been processed by the garden. Tay's consciousness returned like a slow tide, pushing back a black ocean of nothing. His head throbbed with a dull, deep pain, and a strange, bitter taste coated his mouth. He tried to move, but his limbs were heavy and uncooperative. He was lying on something soft, not the hard ground of the forest. He forced his eyes open. He was in a room. Light came from above, not electric light, but the soft, natural glow of the sun coming through a clear material set into a ceiling. He was on a low cot, covered with a blanket of woven plant fibers. The air was warm and carried the scent of drying herbs and clean soil. He turned his head, a stiff and painful effort. His tactical armor was gone. He wore only his simple undersuit. Across the small, round room, sitting on a stool, was the Karate soldier who had been hit in the neck, a female named Jay. She was awake, her large eyes wide with fear and confusion. A clean bandage was wrapped around her shoulder. She met his gaze and gave a slight, shaky shake of her head. "We are alive," it seemed to say, "for now." The door, a simple panel of fitted wood, slid open. A human woman entered. It was not the woman from the probe feed. This one was older, her face lined and kind, her hair streaked with gray. She wore simple trousers and a tunic of faded blue fabric. She carried a wooden bowl and a clay cup. "You are awake," she said. Her voice was soft, and she spoke the common galactic tongue with a clear, careful accent. "The venom's effect is passing. Drink this. It will help with the pain and the shaking." She offered the cup to Tay. He stared at it, then at her. This was not the treatment of a conqueror or a savage. This was the calm care of a medic. Slowly, he pushed himself up and took the cup. The liquid inside was warm, slightly sweet, and full of earthy flavors. He drank. "Why?" he croaked, his throat dry. "Why not just kill us?" The woman sat on the edge of a nearby table made of smooth, polished stone. "Killing you would have been a waste," she said simply. "And it would have made the others in the sky angry. Anger makes creatures stupid and loud. We do not need more noise." "You attacked us?" Tay said, strength returning to his voice along with his anger. "You stepped in the snare," she corrected gently, as if explaining something to a child. "The snare is for the large metal birds that sometimes fall from the sky. Your people have been sending them for a long, long time. The snare is there. You chose to step in it. My name is Yuna. I am a healer here." Jay, the scientist, found her voice. "Where is here? What is this place?" "This is the village of Midstream," Yuna said. "It is our home. We saw your ship break the quiet. We heard its voice. We knew you would come down. You always do." "You always do?" Tay repeated, the horror dawning. "Other ships? Karate ships?" Yuna nodded. "And others. Different shapes. Different voices. They all come. They look at the green world and they think it is empty. They think it is free for the taking. They are wrong." "The plague?" Jay whispered. her scientific mind latching onto the old story. The interstellar sickness killed your civilization. A sad, knowing smile touched Yuna's lips. The aftergloom did not kill us, changed us. It made it impossible to live in great herds, in giant hives of metal and light. It forced us apart. Those of us who lived were the ones who were already apart, who knew how to live with the land, not on top of it. There is no great human leader to speak to.
No capital.
There is only midstream, and Rockfield, and Pine Lookout. Each village, each family, looks after itself. Tay tried to process this. So you are just survivors? Hiding in the ruins. It made a terrible kind of sense. They were primitive, using traps and darts. But Yuna shook her head. We are not hiding. We are living. And we are guarding. Guarding what? This one village. Guarding the silence, Yuna said, her kind eyes turning serious. Long ago, when the gloom was fresh and the great networks were failing, the last of the old ones made a choice. They could not protect us anymore. So they made something that could. They gave it one rule and then they let it go. A cold feeling, deeper than any venom, seeped into Tay's bones. What did they make? Yuna looked toward the door, as if she could see through it to the sky. A shield, but not a wall. A filter. They told it to watch the dark between stars. To look for the wrong kind of light, the wrong kind of metal, the wrong kind of life. And to be quiet. To be very, very quiet as it cleaned. Jay's hand went to her mouth. The derelicts. The dead ships in orbit. It wasn't the plague that killed them. The shield does not fight, Yuna explained, her voice dropping to a near whisper. Fighting is loud. Consumes. It takes the noisy things apart, piece by tiny piece, and uses the pieces to make more of itself. To watch more of the dark. Your big ships in the sky, they do not die in battle. They are digested. Slowly. In the quiet. Tay thought of the Vanguard hanging in orbit, its powerful engine silent, its scanners peering down. He thought of the flickering lights on the dead stations, the random pings. It wasn't a malfunction. It was a nervous system, a galaxy-sized immune system, and they had flown right into its bloodstream. You control this thing? Tay asked, hope flaring weakly. Yuna laughed, a soft, hopeless sound. No one controls it. It is like the weather, or gravity. We live beneath it. We know its rules. We stay small. We stay quiet. We use nothing it might mistake for a noisy thing. Your ship, she said, looking at him with genuine pity, is the noisiest thing to come here in my lifetime. It is already sick. The quiet sickness. It will not leave this place. And neither will you. The door opened again. A human man entered. He was older than Yuna, his face a map of deep lines and sun-toughened skin. His hair was short and gray. He moved with a silent, careful economy, like a hunter. His eyes, a sharp and watchful brown, took in Tay and Jay in a single glance. No fear, no anger, just assessment. This is June, Yuna said. He was a scout before. He knows the old paths and the old stories better than anyone. June leaned against the stone wall, his arms crossed. He looked at the two Karate not as prisoners, but as a problem that had landed in his lap. Yuna says you ask why, June said. His voice was rougher than hers, like stone grinding against stone. You want to understand the cage you flew into. So, I will show you. He gestured for them to stand. Tay hesitated, then slowly got to his feet. His body ached, but the herbal drink had cleared the fog from his mind. Jay stood beside him, her scientist's curiosity pushing past her fear. June led them out of the room. They were in the village proper. It was not a primitive camp. It was a community built into and around the bones of the old town. A broken concrete wall formed the back of a goat pen. A rusted groundcar frame was woven with living vines to make a greenhouse. People moved about their work, weaving, grinding grain, repairing tools. They glanced at the aliens, their looks cautious but not surprised. It was the look you gave a strange, potentially dangerous animal that had wandered into your yard. June led them to the edge of the settlement. to a place where the forest had been cleared to reveal a sheer rock face. Vines had been pulled back to show a metal door, old and stained but intact. June worked a simple mechanical latch, no electronics, no lights, and the door swung open with a groan. Inside was a cool, dark space. Light came from a single shaft cut from above. The room was not large. In its center, mounted on a pedestal of crude rock, was a machine. It was a black, smooth slab about the size of a small table. One side was a dark screen. Wires, old and brittle-looking, snaked from it into the rock wall. "This is a listener," June said, his voice echoing softly in the chamber. "One of the last. It does not make anything. It only hears the shield." He placed his hand on the slab. The dark screen flickered to life. It showed not images but streams of data, symbols in an old human script, graphs that spiked and fell, and a three-dimensional map of the star system. Tay recognized it immediately. He saw the sun, the planets, the orbital paths, and he saw the Vanguard, a bright, pulsing dot of blue light, holding position near Eden 7, but the Vanguard was not alone around it. Like a shimmering, invisible cloud were thousands, millions of tiny gray specks. They were clustered around the ship, so dense they looked like fog. As Tay watched, the cloud pulsed, and a wave of the specks flowed over the ship's outline, clinging to it. "What are they?" Jay breathed, stepping closer. "The smallest hands of the shield," June said. "The quiet eaters. They look for the signature of your technology, the energy from your engines, the shape of your metal. They are finding it all. They are reading the blueprint of your ship." On the map, June pointed to other points in the system. Near the derelict habitats, the clouds of gray specks were so thick they were almost solid. Around a shattered battleship near the gas giant, they formed a swirling, slow-motion vortex. "Your people and others, they thought the plague left a treasure box, open and free," June said. "They did not understand. The box was a stomach. Every ship that came, the shield tasted it, learned it, then it ate it. It used the materials to make more of itself. More listeners, more eaters, more traps for planets. It does not think. It just does. Its only command is to find what is not from here and unmake it." Tay stared at the pulsing cloud around the Vanguard. "Can you stop it? Can you call it off?" June gave a short, bitter laugh. "Stop it? No more than you can stop the tide. The ones who made it are dust. We are the mice who learned to build our nests in the walls of the machine. We know its rhythms. We stay small. We use wood, stone, ceramic, things it does not see as a threat. Your ship is a feast. It is ringing a dinner bell across the whole system." He zoomed the map out. Now Tay could see the entire edge of human demarcated space. It was not an empty border. It was a haze, a faint, almost invisible ring of dormant gray, waiting. "It lets simple things pass," June continued. "Rocks, dust, light. But a ship with a fusion heart? A ship talking with radio shouts? That it sees, that it follows, and it does not attack. That would be noise. It just sticks to you. It learns. Then, when it is ready, it begins to take you apart. Your systems fail. Your air leaks. Your lights go out, one piece at a time, until you are just another silent piece of the scenery." The horror was complete. It was not a monster. It was a process. A silent, patient, automatic process of digestion. The derelicts weren't war graves. They were half-eaten bones. "Your warning," Jay said, remembering the message. "The one on the radio. Turn back." "A habit," Eunice said from the doorway. "A small mercy. Sometimes, if a ship is small enough and turns fast enough, the shield loses interest. But your ship, it is too loud. Came too far. The meal has already begun." June looked at Tay, his eyes holding a grim certainty. "Your captain up there, he is probably looking at his perfect ship, seeing nothing wrong. But the quiet is already inside. There is no battle to fight. Only a dinner to be eaten." On the bridge of the KSS Vanguard, everything was going wrong in ways that made no sense. Captain Kale stood at the command console, his knuckles white. The planet below was a silent, green mockery. There had been no more transmissions from the surface. No sign of Tay's squad. The shuttle was just gone. Its signal vanished without a trace. And now his ship was sick. "Report!" he barked, for the third time in as many minutes. First Observer Min's voice was strained, his hands flying over his console. "It is not a single system failure, Captain. It is systemic degradation. The external sensor array on the port side just went offline. Not damaged. It reports being physically disconnected." "By what?" "There is nothing out there." "Visual confirmation," said a junior officer, his voice shaking. The main view screen flickered, then showed an external camera feed from the ship's hull. For a moment they saw the starfield. Then, something skittered across the lens. It was a small, spider-like machine no bigger than a hand. Its body was a dull gray, made of a material that seemed to drink the light. It had too many legs, thin and sharp as needles. It paused, a single red photoreceptor focusing on the camera for a chilling second. Then it plunged a leg into the housing beside the lens. The feed fizzed and died, replaced by static. A collective breath was sucked from the bridge. They had seen no ship, no weapon. Just a tiny, silent thing. "Hull integrity?" Kale demanded. "Pressure is dropping in sections 7 through 12, Min reported, his face pale. "Microscopic breaches. Something is drilling, not with heat or lasers. It is a mechanical and chemical process. Incredibly slow, incredibly thorough." Hannah, the biologist, was studying a secondary scan. "It is not just the hull, Captain. I am reading anomalous compounds in the internal atmosphere. Trace amounts. They are bonding to metal surfaces, forming a dissipative nanolayer. It is like a rust but designed. It is breaking down the alloys at a molecular level." The lights on the bridge dimmed for a second, then brightened. A low, subaudible hum that had been part of the ship's background noise for years suddenly ceased, leaving an unsettling silence in its place. "The main reactor is cycling down on its own," the engineering officer called out, panic edging his voice. "Safeties are engaging. I cannot override them." It is as if the computer is being convinced the reactor is a danger to itself. Kale felt a cold terror, different from the fear of battle. This was the fear of being buried alive, of being dissolved in the dark. He slammed his fist on the comms panel.
Tay.
"Squad Leader Tay. Respond." Only static answered. His pride shattered, replaced by a desperate, survivalist rage. "They are doing this. The primitives on the planet. They have some hidden weapon. Target the settlement we saw on the probe feed. Main cannon. Maximum yield. We will burn their insolence from the orbit." The crew jumped to obey. The great ship turned ponderously. The targeting systems locked onto the coordinates of the human village. The hum of the particle cannon charging filled the bridge, a sound of immense power. "Fire!" Kale screamed. A blinding lance of blue-white energy, capable of vaporizing a mountain, shot from the vanguard and stabbed down toward the planet. It never struck. 100 kilometers above the atmosphere. The beam hit something invisible. A honeycomb pattern of golden light, hexagonal and perfect, flared into existence across a vast area of the sky. The beam splashed against it, the energy diffusing, spreading, being absorbed across the entire shield. From below, it would have looked like a sudden, silent aurora on the bridge. The power feedback alarms screamed. The cannon had fired, but its energy had been swallowed by a shield they never detected. "What was that?" Kale roared. Min was staring at his scanner, his face a mask of horror. "Planetary defense screen. But the energy signature, it is not human. It matches the core signatures of hegemony ships. Older models, and others. I am reading Karati, Telran, Gol. It is a patchwork. It is made from. He couldn't say it. Hannah did, her voice hollow with understanding. "It is made from the hearts of the ships that came before us. They took our own power and made a shield from it. The finality of it crushed the bridge. Their greatest weapon had been turned into an umbrella for their enemies, crafted from the corpses of their own kind. Then the long-range scanner alerted. Something was moving at the edge of the system. Something massive. The sensor image resolved, and a new dread filled the room that it was an asteroid, one of millions in the system's distant belt. But this one was changing. Its rocky surface was sloughing away like a shell, revealing a dark, geometric interior of impossible complexity. It was not a warship. It was a factory, a moon-sized fabricator, now awake. Thrusters of silent plasma, glowing a faint, sickly green, ignited along its side. It began to move not quickly, but with an awful, undeniable purpose. Its course was an intercept with the Vanguard. "It is coming for us," Min whispered. Kale stood frozen. There was no enemy to fight, no fleet to outmaneuver, just a silent, patient response to their noise. A digestive enzyme coming to finish the job. Hannah fell into her chair. She opened the ship-wide comm, her voice breaking. She did not speak to the captain. She spoke to the void, hoping someone somewhere might be listening. "This is the KSS Vanguard. Do not follow. Do not search for us. There is no enemy here to fight. There is only a quiet, and it is hungry. Turn back. Turn back." Her message burst into the darkness. A final, desperate ripple. On the view screen, the immense, dark shape of the fabricator blotted out the stars as it drew closer, a silent mouth opening in the dark. Yuna led Tay and Jay out of the listening chamber and up a narrow path to a high, rocky bluff overlooking the village. The sun was setting, painting the sky in colors of orange and purple. It was beautiful. From here, they could see the whole valley, the neat fields, the smoke from cooking fires, the peaceful order of a world that had moved on. June pointed a calloused finger upwards, to a specific point in the darkening sky where the first stars were beginning to appear. "Watch," he said. His voice flat. Tay looked. He saw the bright, steady pinprick of light that was the KSS Vanguard, holding its guard position. Then he saw a second, larger shape move into view, blocking the stars behind it. It was a dark, irregular blot. The fabricator. Even from this distance, its outline was wrong, too geometric for a natural asteroid. For a long time, nothing happened. The two shapes hung in the sky, silent and still. Then the light of the Vanguard began to change. It did not explode. It did not flash. Simply dimmed. Piece by piece, light by light, the ship went dark. The bright pinprick became a faint smudge, and then it was gone, swallowed by the shadow of the larger object. There was no sound. No streak of fire in the atmosphere. No glorious last stand. It was as if someone had slowly, carefully, turned off a lamp in a distant room. Tay felt his legs go weak. He sat down heavily on the rock. The entire crew, Captain Kale, the engineers, the pilots, the cooks, gone. Not killed, but processed. Taken apart in the silent, airless dark. The reality of it was colder than any death he had ever imagined. "It is done," Yuna said softly. There was no triumph in her voice, only a deep, tired sadness. They walked back down to the village in silence. The nightly routines were continuing. People were eating, talking in low voices, preparing for sleep. The arrival and the end of the alien ship was just another event, like a storm passing. It was not their business. It was the business of the shield. Back in the simple room, June faced them. He had 2 cups of water and placed them on the stone table. "You have a choice now," he said. "Not a good one, but a choice." Tay looked up, his eyes empty. "What choice?" "You can stay," June said. "You can live here in midstream. You will work. You will learn our ways. You will live small and quiet. You will never leave this world. The shield knows your biology now. If you tried to go up in anything it sees as a ship, it would eat you on the way. But here on the ground you can live." Jay wrapped her arms around herself. "And the other choice?" June walked to a corner of the room and pulled back a heavy tarp. Beneath it was a vehicle. It was unlike anything they had seen. It was shaped like a teardrop, but its hull was not metal. It looked like it was made of polished wood and some kind of hardened, translucent resin. Through the material, They could see complex inner workings that were organic in nature. Pulsing sacks of fluid, fibrous bundles that looked like muscle. "This is a pathwalker," June explained. "It is very old. From the time just after the gloom. It does not have an engine that burns. It grows. It is more like a plant or an animal that has been guided. It is not technology the shield recognizes. It might be able to slip through the quiet." "Might?" Tay asked. "Might," June repeated. "It is slow. It has no weapons. It has room for one, maybe two if they are small. It will take you years, maybe decades, to reach another star. And when you get there, you must hope your people believe your story." He looked at them, his gaze steady. "Stay, and live a long, quiet life in a cage. Or go, and risk dying in the dark to deliver a warning that no one may believe." Tay thought of the bridge, of the crew, of the silent, skittering things on the hull. He thought of living the rest of his life in this green, peaceful prison, looking up every night at a sky that was a predator's mouth. He was a soldier. His duty was to warn his people. "I will go," Jay said suddenly, her voice firm. She was a scientist. Her duty was to the truth. "I will take the pathwalker. I will try." Tay looked at her, then at the kind, sad face of Yuna, and the grim, honest face of June. He thought of duty, and then he thought of the slow, quiet horror of the Vanguard's end. He was so tired. "I will stay," he whispered. The next morning, under a gray sky, the pathwalker was brought to a clearing far from the village. It sat on the grass, looking like a giant seed pod. Jay stood before it, dressed in simple human clothes. She had no possessions. June gave her a small data crystal. "This holds all we know of the shield. Its patterns. The warning. It is not much." Jay took it and nodded. She looked at Tay one last time, then entered the vehicle through a flexible, iris-like opening. It sealed behind her. For a few minutes, nothing happened. Then, the resinous hull began to glow with a soft, internal bioluminescence. With a sound like a deep sigh, it lifted from the ground, not with thrust, but with a kind of gentle buoyancy. It rose slowly, silently, into the misty morning air. It became a faint, greenish light, then a dot. Then it was gone, heading for the edge of the system. Tay watched it disappear. He felt an emptiness that was too vast for words. Weeks later, on a clear night, he stood with June, looking at the stars. The sky was busy. Ships still twinkled up there. The derelicts, the ruins, the half-digested bones of empires. They looked peaceful. "Do you think she made it?" Tay asked, his voice rough. June was quiet for a long time. "It does not matter," he said finally. "The warning is not for your people. It is for us. It is the story we tell ourselves so we remember what we live with." He gestured to the beautiful, terrible sky. "We are the keepers of the quiet. And the quiet is always hungry." Tay looked up. The stars were not points of light. They were teeth in a dark mouth. And humanity, his new people, were the careful, quiet caretakers who swept the jaws clean, forever trapped in the belly of the monster they had built to save themselves. Its name was not war. Its name was survival. And it had won completely.